Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's hybrid education program at Cancer Support Community South Bay. I'm Rebecca, the program manager, and I welcome you to this workshop titled Flavor Revival, Cooking with Herbs and Spices for Changing Taste. Before we begin, if this is your first time joining us, CSC South Bay's mission is to uplift and strengthen people impacted by cancer by providing support, fostering compassionate communities, and breaking down barriers to care. Our vision is that everyone impacted by cancer receive the support they want and need throughout their experience. We serve the South Bay, Long Beach, and Orange County area all at no cost. Our program includes support groups, networking groups, healthy lifestyle classes, social activities, and educational programs like this workshop. Educational programs are open to all. If you'd like to hear more about our services or join our community, please visit our website at cscsouthbay.org. Before I introduce today's speaker, we ask you to keep your microphone muted to eliminate any distracting background noise for those online. And for those online, please feel free to enter any general questions into the chat function found at the bottom of the Zoom window. And then for those in person, we will have scheduled times where you are able to ask your questions. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Shelby DCN, RDN-AP, CNSC, is a registered dietitian and doctor of clinical nutrition, specializing in oncology and digestive diseases. She practices at various hospitals throughout Southern California, where she built high-impact nutrition programming to bring high-quality nutrition care to the community. She also founded a health technology company that brings expert supportive care to cancer patients and the caregivers. Thank you so much, Shelby, for being here with us today.
All right, thank you so much for having me. Doing a quick mic check to make sure everybody's able to hear me.
Sounds good, Shelby.
Wonderful. Okay. So today's going to be a little bit of if you've ever been to one of my sessions, I tend to do more non-traditional education workshops and seminars because I like things to be really interactive and hands-on and for people to actually be able to walk away with something that means something to them rather than just doing information overload. And so that's usually kind of my style in these types of workshops. So I want you to think the theme for today is nourishing you. And that is a big, broad category and can mean a lot of different things. I guarantee if I asked every single person here what nourishing you meant, you would have a different answer, right? Because we're all at different stages in our individual journeys and our health and well-being. And what nourishment means to you today may not mean what nourishment means to you next week, even. So health is very much a dynamic system, if you will. And I like to remind people that our bodies don't work in just one system. We've got a lot of things working together. And then when one system doesn't work, it can change how we do other systems. And so sometimes when we think of nutrition, we just think of eating, food, beverages. But we forget that nutrition is so much more than that. It's also senses, sensory aspects of it, what we see, what we feel, the color of food, the taste of food, the textures of food, the temperature of foods and meals that we consume. So there's so much more to it than just as simple as it's food and nutrients. So that's what I'm kind of hoping to bring forward with today's workshop and seminar is looking at nutrition in a little bit of a different light and bringing in some of our senses into our palate in a sense to help enhance what we're able to do with our nutrition goals. So we're going to be talking through a plethora of cooking strategies, nutrition strategies, really highlighting the benefits and highlighting the opportunities to use spices and herbs throughout your individual journeys. So at a fundamental level, first off, I want to welcome you and thank you for being here today and remind you that at the basics, if we really just think about it and keep it simple, food is nourishment. Food is fuel. Food is also comfort. Food is pleasure. Food can be connection, social connection, human connection, interaction. So food is not just as simple as we eat this, we feel this, or we get vitamins, or we get minerals. Food is really at a large level an experience, and we have the ability, food is one of the things that we get to control to some degree. The choices we make, how that food appears, the intention behind eating. This is something I often work with a lot of my patients with. Are we eating for pleasure? Are we eating for nourishment? Are we eating for comfort? Are we eating for coping? And when we start identifying that, it helps you also drive what you're thinking and doing with nutrition. And sometimes we think of things like healthy food doesn't taste good, or my palate has changed so much, having a lot of taste changes, having food aversions during my cancer journey. And so today we're really going to dial in on how we can change that mindset and change some of these techniques using really simple strategies with spices and herbs, and just going back to the basics of what we can do to enhance our eating experience. Pretty cool. I would love, from an icebreaker standpoint, everyone doesn't have to go. We can kind of popcorn around the room a little bit here. And those of you who are joining virtually, you're welcome to drop this in the chat and we can share that as well. You're welcome to share your name and a comfort food that you've enjoyed during treatment. That can mean whatever you want it to. Would anyone like to start? Yeah.
My name is Nora. I've enjoyed probably a lot of during chemo and Kentucky Fried mashed potatoes and gravy.
We've got a Kentucky Fried mashed potatoes and gravy as our first one.
My name is
Mexican food. Burritos. I love it. So we've got a Mexican food burritos, probably a lot of spices and herbs and flavors in that. Anyone else would like to share?
Hi, my name is Kai, and I was craving always for rice porridge with a lot of crispy garlic.
Rice porridge with crispy garlic, a very different flavor profile than what we've had before. So we're starting to see how these different types of cuisines, cultural influence, the spices, the flavors can really change what we're craving and what our personal preferences are. This is exactly why we're doing this. Anyone else would like to share? Jell-O. Okay, I love it. Any particular flavor of Jell-O?
Orange, green.
We usually have a flavor preference, right? So orange Jell-O and green Jell-O, right? Orange and green, okay?
Piggybacking on make it chimichangas.
So the texture influences some of your comfort. A chimichanga is what someone else said there for those online. And those online, you're welcome to, again, drop in the chat, and I'm happy to share yours as well. Anyone else? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Rice, sweet potatoes.
I love it. Sweet potatoes in an air fryer, so it's convenient. It's easy to have ready and heat up, and it also gives us probably that crispy crunch, right? Awesome. Anyone else have a comfort food that they would like to share? Not seeing anyone online in the chat, feel free to still. If not, we'll go ahead and move forward. Thank you for sharing first off, and you probably realize there's a lot of different answers there. Some of you probably resonated with some, and others you were like, nah, not my favorite. That is normal food psychology. We are accustomed to the flavors, the cultural influences, our family, our home environment, what our exposure is around food. I grew up in Ohio, in a small town for majority of my life. And I did not have a lot of flavor profiles there. There was very, American-based restaurants, a lot of fast food, a lot of chains. There's very little kind of cuisine opportunities to explore. And then when I moved to California, I was like, wow, there's so much food. I had never even seen sushi before as a young adult. And so we think about these things, but, a lot of people are not necessarily exposed in their home community environments to so many different flavor profiles, foods, cuisines, cultural influences. So these are things that I encourage you to think about being in a Southern California melting pot, that you have so much opportunity here to enhance that flavor profile, get a little bit creative, get a little wild on that Friday night with what you're creating and shaking things up. So that way you're not feeling like you're in this repetition with your cooking and your nutrition strategies. Sometimes just making a couple of wildish changes in your nutrition plan can really go a long way to keeping you engaged in your goals. I want us to remember that there's the concept of the spiral of side effects in the burden of eating. Who's ever resonated or felt this? I'm having a spiral of my side effects. I don't have interest in eating. I don't care about food anymore. I don't view food as exciting, or I just have, it's something I have to do because I know I have to. That's something I hear all the time. I eat because I'm told I have to, right? And I want to challenge that because while that's probably very much true for you, we can still use some of these pearls that we're going to learn today to weave these in to make the eating experience as enjoyable as possible. Even though that might be the last thing we're excited about, that's okay. I can respect that. But we can still create some of your nutritional meals and snacks in a way that you actually somewhat enjoy, even if it's not to the same degree. There's the concept of the burden of eating. Who's heard of this one? Oh, the burden, right? Like eating becomes burdensome. And so I'd love to hear from you all. What are some things that you've done if you've resonated with being in a spiral of side effects, where side effects are really impacting your ability or desire to eat, or you feel this burden of having to eat because you know you're told to? What are things that have been successful for you with your meals and snacks? We're sharing some pearls right now. Go ahead. So using things like protein powders or drinks are alternative ways to still get nutrition in. I want to piggyback off that. Some of you say, I hate the flavor and taste of protein powders or protein drinks or nutrition supplements, right? Oral nutrition supplements is what we call them in the hospital setting. I want to remind you, spices and herbs are a really great way to dress those up. I cannot tell you how many people I've said, do you like a pumpkin spice latte or frappuccino from Starbucks? I say, yes, I love it. Can we add pumpkin spice flavor into your protein drinks moving forward? Does that sound good to you? And they're like, oh, now I'll try that instead of vanilla. So don't forget that we can dress up some of these things in ways that are very different than just purchasing them and just drinking them. Okay? Uh-huh. Awesome. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And for those people online, somebody was describing their experience of how they were kind of doctoring up their protein powders and their protein drinks with things like acai, things like fruit, things like additional ingredients. You can always think about using things like a high protein yogurt, like a Greek yogurt. You can use non-dairy milks. Fun fact, when we're using things like the high protein yogurts, like Greek yogurt, those tend to be the lowest lactose. And most people with lactose intolerance are able to tolerate those yogurts pretty well because they have such little lactose content. So sometimes if we just see things and we associate with food intolerances, we're adverse to it. But sometimes just kind of opening up and really understanding if this type of yogurt is different than this type of yogurt can be helpful for you to widen up the diversity. So with those, with those kind of protein drinks or oral nutrition supplements, A really great option is thinking about what spices and flavors that you do like if you don't like the product, and then how can we make a change to it? Okay, so some of the things that I'll show you today are some really great options like cinnamon, nutmeg, pumpkin pie spice. Some people like to even do things if they like something a little kind of tangy and spicy. They'll even put something like a little chili powder in their vanilla protein drinks. And they love that flavor, that blend. Ginger in some, right? So there's lots of ways that we can doctor these up to make the flavors more meaningful. So we're willing to take them. And it's an experience that you're not like, the plug my nose, the suck it down, I run away. I tell all of my patients, if that's how we're eating, we need to do something differently. Because the eating should not be that painful of an experience for you. There's got to be some strategies we can try out. So today, we're going to talk about why nutrition matters at kind of a whole scale lens, a holistic lens here. I'm going to go through some very simple meals, some recipe ideas today, some food pairings. We'll talk a little bit about symptom management and how spices and herbs can help mitigate or reduce some of the symptoms you may have experienced at some time point or you might in the future. And then we're going to do some really fun spices and herb activities. For those of you online, just know that I kept you very much in mind when I was creating this presentation the other day. So these activities are meant to be done either at home or in person. And you can also take some notes, whether that's on your phone or on paper as you're going along and just kind of noticing what you notice. If you'd like to jot that down in journal, feel free to. But you'll be able to participate online as well in some of our activities today. So why does nutrition matter? When I think about this and I think about a cancer journey, I think of these kind of 4 big pillars. Energy. Do we have energy to do the things that we want to do and we need to do? Strength and functional status. Are we able to move our bodies and keep our bodies strong enough to have a quality of life and have the functional status that we're hoping? Recovery. Are we able to recover our bodies, our muscles? Whether that's in between treatments, before and after surgery, long term, whether that's going through recurrence, there's so many areas that this applies to. Do we get to recover even just day to day? Do we get that overnight rest and recharge? Then, of course, quality of life. This means different things to different people. What are your personal goals? What are your metrics that you view as what's important to your quality of life? Are there milestones you're looking to achieve? So these are, we could do a whole talk in just these ones, but I want to remind you at a big picture level of what we're talking about, this is why this matters. If you do not fuel your body, if you do not eat, you do not have gas in your tank. It's that simple. And I like to say that because I think a lot of people forget that. I don't want to eat. I'm too tired to eat. I sleep through. I nap all day. I don't move. It's no wonder the body continues to break down because you're running on empty. Your gas tank is empty. And so again, even if it means something like leveraging alternative ways to eat, like we talked about earlier with oral nutrition supplements or smoothies or different ways that we're getting in food that doesn't look like our traditional way that we're usually eating, that is okay. Leverage it, use it, because you're giving yourself nutrients that you otherwise would be skipping. So just things to really kind of ground in and think. There's this whole concept of what we call nutrition impact symptoms. Who's heard of that before? Nutrition impact symptoms. These are basically treatment side effects or treatment symptoms that impact somebody's ability to eat. There's a lot. Like I'm sure all of you could say, I can think of 15. Really, when we go back to the literature and what we see this like quantified as, we usually see things like difficulties with swallowing, dry mouth, changes in our ability to actually form and push food down. We think of things like taste and smell changes. We think of things like oral pain or swelling, mouth sores, early satiety or what's called early fullness. We feel really full even though we only had 3 bites. Nausea, vomiting, Things like GI distress, diarrhea, constipation, all of these things, unfortunately, because we talked about our body as a system earlier, impact your desire to eat. If you're constipated and bloated, you're not going to eat very much. So then we have to think about our bowel health. If we have not moved around at all and we're mostly in our bed and we don't want to get up and we're missing our physical therapy exercises and we're, not showing up for those because we're feeling too tired, understandable, but the body's also not going to feel super hungry because you're not moving. Your muscles are breaking down. So these again go back to the body as a whole system in what we eat and how intentional we are with it make a difference to how we're tolerating things too. Nutrition impact symptoms unfortunately can compound, especially during active treatment periods. It's a compound effect. You've probably been told that. Things usually, get more and more concentrated because that's what medications and these different agents are meant to do. And what happens is these nutrition impact symptoms can get worse or they can change. I might notice my taste and smell is starting to have altered. I'm having more food aversions, having more GI symptoms. I'm having more like oral mouth sores or different things that can happen in the oral cavity. And some of these things can linger for a really long time even after treatment concludes. That's what people don't always talk about or tell you. I cannot tell you how many patients I have seen a year or two down the road that still can't taste a lot of foods. And so then we go back to what can we do to enhance your taste buds and the flavor of foods so it's more enjoyable. Because if things don't taste good, if everything tastes bland or it tastes just like rice with no flavor at all, we're usually not super excited to eat. We're like, ugh, it's the same flavor all the time. So again, it's thinking about what we can do to enhance the eating experience. That's where flavor enhancement comes. I think this slide really, could be the premise of this entire program that we're doing today. But I want you to think we're using aromatic herbs and spices to help compensate for taste changes. When taste is altered, there is evidence-based ways that are proven to help combat the feeling or the experience that you're having. For example, if you're like, everything tastes sweet. Things taste very sweet to me. We want to actually add small amounts of spicy elements. Please don't go pour an entire thing of chili peppers into your sweet protein drink. Just don't do it. Start small. Do a pinch of black pepper in that drink. Blend it in. Does that now cut the sweetness out for you? Something as simple as a pinch of black pepper in your vanilla flavored drink can go a really long way. Something as simple as using a small amount of some sort of, whether that's chili flake, chili pepper, something small amount. Now be mindful, if we have reflux, if we have digestive issues that this doesn't make sense for, we may need to alter the strategy. But you would be surprised, many people who say, I've been told I'm never allowed to have any of these things. Not always quite the case. A lot of it is very individualized, where it's more about if you tolerate it, in what quantity. Usually a pinch of something for flavor does not generally cause side effects, aside from garlics and onion. For some people who are more sensitive to FODMAPs, that's a different conversation. But for this, we're talking specifically about overcoming taste changes or taste bud alterations. So let's say you have something that's too salty. What do? We can add citrus-based juice. Lime juice being one that can be really helpful. Squeezing fresh orange, squeezing fresh lemon, maple syrup, or cream into something to help cut the salt flavor. Simple strategies. If you're like, my chicken, some people will say my chicken tastes really salty. My animal protein just tastes so different. It doesn't taste like animal protein anymore. Everything tastes salty. Then we want to start thinking about having things like a bottle of lime juice, lemon juice at home where we can start squeezing some of that into our dishes or into our cooking strategies. That will help cut the saltiness. Too bitter. Lemon juice, add rosemary, consider adding garlic. Garlic has a threshold. When we go to a powdered form of garlic, which is what I brought today, that tends to be the most digestive friendly. When we go to a chopped, fresh, cooked, that's the next most digestive friendly. Chopped, fresh garlic, that's cooked. Raw garlic, whether that's in cloves or whether that's chopped up, the least digestive friendly. That's not to say you can't tolerate raw garlic. Some people do very well. They're like, I love it. Great, let's do it. But be mindful that, garlic and onions also, same thing goes with onion powder, with dried onion, with raw cooked onion, with raw onion, same threshold. You might find that there are places on that threshold that you actually tolerate really well, and those flavors can be really powerful for people to enjoy their meal. So just things to think about. When we're talking about too sour, things are sour for me. We want to think about warm spices, cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg, or we want to think about processed honey. Who knows why we need processed honey? Food safety. When we have a compromised immune system, we're immunocompromised, we don't want to have raw honey. It's a risk for botulism or foodborne illness. We'll save it for the Q&A. So that's something to think about. So you might have been told by your oncologist or your healthcare team, don't have any honey. And you're like, what? I love honey. You are absolutely okay to have processed honey, not raw honey. That's the difference because it's pasteurized. So we want to make sure it's pasteurized honey. So when we're thinking about this from practical application, we can think of these different flavors: cinnamon, turmeric, garlic, ginger, black pepper, rosemary. We need to make sure we have access to these. In your homes, whoever's cooking for you, having the awareness that we can change what our flavor profile is by cross-cutting with other flavors in. Cut the sweet, cut the salt, cut the bitterness. There's ways to do it with very minimal effort, less than a minute. A pinch of black pepper goes a long way for some people with the sweetness. When we're thinking about techniques to maximize flavor, you might say, I just don't taste anything. My taste buds just aren't tasting things. I want you to think that there's a lot of cooking strategies that can be really simple that also help maximize the flavor that you're getting. So for example, garlic. Try roasting it. Little olive oil and roast. That goes a long way to bring out the flavor. If you're like, I really love garlic and I just can't taste it anymore, try roasting it. Caramelizing your onions. It's going to bring out a different flavor profile for you. Roasting your herbs with vegetables. Be generous. You should see how generous I am sometimes at home. It's like aggressive with the spices and herbs. Lots of spices and herbs, like overwhelm. And that's what I tell patients I'm working with. Overwhelm your visual senses because you put so much on it until you feel like it hit the sweet spot for you. There's really nothing your body's going to do about a lot of dried basil, right? Like there's really no adverse effect per se. So use what you need to. That will be meaningful for your flavors. And it may be more than what you think you need to bring things out. I'm not saying to go drink a whole bottle of black pepper, but I'm saying to be generous with what you think you might need for your flavors. When we're thinking about texture and temperature modifications, these things very much matter. We talked about senses and sensory adaptations earlier. We adapt food textures for things like difficulty swallowing, oral pain, fatigue with eating. Somebody says I have to chew and it's so tiring to chew. Let's puree that puppy up. eat it with a spoon. Let's make it like a soup. You still get it, and you get the flavors, but you don't have to work to chew it. So there's ways that we can adjust the texture of foods if we're having barriers due to things like fatigue or swallowing, etc. We want to think about temperatures that can enhance palatability of foods, make foods more enjoyable. Cold is usually better for nausea and digestion. This one I think a lot of people don't realize. They always want to go for like warm liquids. Cold is usually better for nausea or indigestion. Warm is aromatic, meaning when you cook a warm soup and you have that kind of aromatic sensory experience, that very much worsens many people's nausea when they smell that whiff. They get that bowl of soup or they get that bowl of warm, hot ingredients. They smell it, oh my gosh, too much. That's overwhelming me right now. My nausea is worse now. So just be mindful that sometimes, honestly, I tell some patients to plug. If you're noticing you're having an aversion because of smell, then you may need to have some alternative strategies. If warm foods are the only thing you're tolerating, you may need to plug your nose. I'm not even kidding. Because that's a way to help cut off that sense to make that more enjoyable, that mealtime. Minimizing cooking effort, huge. Nobody wants to cook a 1-hour meal when you're exhausted. Nobody wants to cook a 20-minute meal when you're exhausted. How do we minimize the cooking effort while still maintaining nutritional value? That means keeping things as simple as possible with our cooking techniques. I like this concept of human-centered recipe adaptation. Big fancy term for tailoring your recipes and your meal planning to your situation, to your preference. It's as simple as that. What you needed 3 months ago is probably not what you need today. Be flexible with that. If you are eating the exact same foods every single day, through treatment, after treatment, etc., there's probably opportunity to individualize it a bit more because your body's in different stages of life. So I want you to keep this concept of human-centered recipe adaptation at the forefront. What do I need today? If you are a caregiver, this is so important. If you are somebody that is responsible for cooking meals for somebody else, and you have taken on that role, which is incredible, by the way, we have to also tailor what we're preparing based on the present day to some degree. Because what sounds good today may not be what sounds good in 3 days. So sometimes meal prepping for a week can actually be a disservice because you may prep something 2 days later, I cannot eat that today. That sounds miserable. So being really mindful of that is important. We want to think of our likes and dislikes. If you're like, I don't actually really know what I like and don't like, I encourage you to think about that. And if somebody's cooking for you, let them know because they can't read your mind. If we don't communicate what our needs are, the person who's preparing your meals for you is going to feel frustrated, understandably. It may not know your preferences because they weren't shared. So things to consider. We want to also think about the texture of foods and the temperature of foods along with the flavors of our foods. We've got to think about preferences among both people, that patient-caregiver relationship, which we'll touch base a little bit more on, and be respectful of time. If we're asking somebody to cook an hour meal for us with 3 courses, that may not be reasonable. May be tasty, but it may not be reasonable for that person to undertake. So creating some sort of understanding of what is going to be feasible and realistic so both parties can meet each other's needs. Create visually appealing foods. This is one of my favorites. I have worked in many hospitals, and I can tell you I have seen some very interesting meal trays get pushed off. Many of you can probably relate. And I have worked probably in 9 hospitals in Southern California, and I have seen sometimes like, whoa, what are we doing here? This can be as simple as, again, using things like spices and herbs to change the colors. I kid you not. Mashed potatoes, chicken, and gravy. With, let's say, some, what am I missing there? Dinner roll. That is all white and gray and a little brown. That's not appealing. You're going to be like, ooh. I mean, it might taste really good, but it doesn't look super appealing. Maybe now we add a little bit of paprika, little red flavor onto the mashed potato. We add a little parsley on top. Now we have some color on that mashed potato. Our chicken, we've got some rosemary on there, some citrus. Right? So we're dressing things up to create a better eating experience, more flavors, and it also looks interesting now. We eat with our eyes. If you're somebody that eats with your eyes, but you can't tolerate a lot of the foods, you need to use spices and herbs to help bring out color, especially for eating a lot of bland foods. It will go a long way. If you're somebody that doesn't like to look at your food, don't look at your food when you're eating. I'm serious, because that can be an aversion in and of itself. To look at it feels overwhelming, doesn't look good. Distract yourself. I tell people that all the time. Distract yourself while you're eating. There's no reason to be staring at your food and to be upset. Watch your favorite movie, listen to an audiobook, phone a friend, distract yourself. Don't look at it and eat, because that can distract you from what your goal is. Visually appealing foods are going to help you aid in satisfaction, and the portion size alone can deter somebody from wanting to eat. If you serve on very large dinner plates and you serve a huge portion, but you know you're only going to eat like a quarter of it, that feels discouraging. You already put yourself at a place that you're not going to succeed by doing that. So be really intentional about what portion you're using. You can always go back for seconds. Maybe it's that you have a smaller portion and your plan is to go back in 15 minutes and get another scoop. So it feels less intimidating. Small strategies, again, that go a long way. Culinary interventions. Group cooking programs, who knew? That's where we're today. Help improve quality of life and eating behaviors. And they do that because we learn these pearls that we can then go home and apply. Group cooking programs, thank you for all being here and showing up. Exactly what you're doing actually support better outcomes. So just by being here today and you using some of these strategies, know that you're on the right path. Culinary nutrition interventions, using culinary and food-based interventions actually help reduce cancer-related fatigue, we know in people. It also helps improve self-management. Why do we think that is? Why do we think it's known to help reduce cancer-related fatigue? Give me your best guess. It can, so we can support our immune system and health and well-being with using culinary techniques. What else? So we're using it as a strategy for our psychosocial health, absolutely. The one I was looking for, I'll just give it to you, don't worry, I won't quiz you. The one I was looking for is that generally speaking, it allows us to optimize our nutrition status because we're eating more, we're enjoying our meal times, we have less aversions to food because we're using strategies that allow us to stay nourished. You become stronger. You're not like, I don't want to eat this, I'm going to skip. Because you say, I'm going to use some of these techniques and now I'm going to eat this meal and not skip it. Creates consistency with our nutrition intake, which goes a long way to reducing cancer-related fatigue. Anti-inflammatory nutrients. The first one I want to talk about is fiber. This is going to help support our gut health. We all know this. Fiber feeds a happy gut. It also supports a diverse bacteria in your gut. When we have diversity in our gut, That's more protective for our immune health, in our immune system, in our cell health. So if you eat the exact same foods and flavors every day, I highly encourage you to start changing things up. The recommendation is 30 plant foods a week. Ooh, that's a lot. Fruits, veggies, and nuts and seeds. 30 plant foods a week. Fruits, veggies, nuts, and seeds. That means if you're somebody that buys the same bag of apples every week, the same bag of bananas every week, that's okay. But we need to make sure we have enough diversity each week. Fiber also supports GI symptoms, GI health. It's going to help the types of fiber may need to change based on what our symptoms are and where we're at in our journey. So just know that there's lots of different types of fiber. Doesn't have to just be whole grain or high fiber bars. There's ways to get in easier to digest fibers, which are known as soluble fibers. And there's a lot of foods that contain soluble fibers that you can look into. Another anti-inflammatory nutrient is lean proteins. This is going to be very important for maintaining muscle mass and preventing loss of function of that muscle mass. There's a lot of strategies that we can use if we have no appetite to how to still get protein in using spices, herbs, and flavor enhancements. That's one of the biggest things that people express is I don't want protein. I'm not interested in animal protein anymore. I used to always eat chicken. I used to always eat turkey and fish, and I don't want it anymore. That's one of the biggest, I'd say, side effects we see with taste changes. That's where we're bringing in citrus, marinades, spices, herbs, whatever we need to do to flavor that up so we can still get in those really important lean proteins. Please don't always just think of animal proteins as protein. Plant-based protein have a lot of really great research, particularly in the cancer space. The American Institute of Cancer Research actually recommends most proteins coming from plant-based proteins as best as we can. Edamame, beans, lentils, nuts, seeds. There's ways to get this tofu, soybeans. There's ways to get in plant-based proteins that can be attractive. Do a scoop of nut butter into your smoothie. Can we roast some garbanzo beans if we like something salty and snack on those? There's a lot of ways we can keep this in our diet pattern. When we're thinking about functional herbs and spices for symptom management, we're thinking of turmeric, ginger, black pepper, garlic, and cinnamon, all of which having really impactful benefits as being functional herbs and spices. Okay, and you'll get to try some of these today and take them home with you. When we're thinking about keeping this really practical from a recipe integration space, we want to build flavor profiles that can combine some of these therapeutic ingredients. So when we saw that list before, and really all spices and herbs have some therapeutic ingredient property, we want to build those flavor profiles that make sense. I'm going to challenge all of you, and for those online, when you're doing your activity in a little bit, where you're going to be building your own herb and spice blend, that you're using a minimum of 3. Because if you're used to just using 1 every single time, try changing it to now we have a different flavor profile by having multiple together. It's a blend. We're balancing nutrition goals with palatability. We're making things taste differently. Using these simple preparation techniques, especially when we're tired and we don't want to eat. We don't have interest in food. These are some activities you guys can try at home. We're not going to do these ones today for the interest of space and time. But I want you to think about having this flavor builder challenge. What you'll do is you'll take a cracker, a small portion of rice, a small spoonful of mashed potato, And then you get to create a flavor combination. You could do a whole bowl of mashed potato and then try multiple different flavors with it and see what you like. Combine things. Get creative. You don't have to just put one. So garlic and parsley, lemon zest and oregano, cinnamon and ginger, rosemary and garlic. Who's ever tried something like this before? Couple of you? It really changes the eating experience. Yeah. Sometimes it definitely can bring things out. Yes. Vinegar is a great strategy too. That one I definitely do by taste. Don't dump in too much at one time because it'll be potent. Yes. Yeah, pickled and fermented is another great option. Just be mindful with the pickled and fermented if we have a sodium restriction. We want to be mindful with our fluid retentions. So when we're thinking about these flavor combos, does any of these kind of strike your fancy? Anything look interesting that you'd like to try? Give me a raise of hand if garlic and parsley sound good. Give me a raise of hand if lemon zest and oregano sounds good. Oh, that was a good one. What about cinnamon and ginger? Yeah. Rosemary and garlic. You got some people just like, my hand's gonna stay on it. I love it. So get adventurous with your palate. If you're looking at this like, I don't usually eat like this, that's okay. Try it out. Pick one. Start small. Now this is really fun. So what's for dinner? What can actually be a really fun activity if you're not cooking and you have somebody that's helping support your nutrition at home? Awesome. If they're tired and you're tired and you don't want to plan what to prepare and you don't want to think about what flavors, create some cards with some proteins, create some cards with some flavors. Draw out of a hat, make it fun, blindfold each other and see what happens. That's a great strategy where you can expand out because that's what the game entails you to do. So if you're somebody that's like, I need the extra push, I need somebody just to tell me what to do, flavor cards can be really helpful. Grab one for protein, grab one for, and just know that oatmeal and vegetables are not protein on here. Grab one for your food card, grab one for your flavor card, mix and match. When we are thinking about complete meals, I think this goes well with this activity. We want to think of protein, color, carbohydrate. Protein being your source for muscle health, color being your veggie or your plant food, and carbohydrate being that complex carbohydrate like your sweet potato, like your beans, your lentils, like your fruit. And then you can think about adding always spices and herbs for flavor enhancement to what you're preparing. Those flavor cards can be fun and bring out some flavors that you might not have even considered with that mealtime before. You might be surprised. We must also, and I wanted to put this out for anyone who watches this, who identifies as a caregiver, that caregiver distress is very real with eating. And it can be incredibly frustrating trying to adapt and change and understand flavor changes when maybe your loved one really, really likes sweet food and now all of a sudden doesn't want anything that's sweet. And that's like what you guys prepare usually with your family. That can feel really frustrating from both sides. Like, I'm not feeling heard. Your flavor profiles are changing. Can feel exhausting at home. So I just wanted to give this a shout out because I don't think we talk about it enough. But there's a very real cultural and emotional significance of food and feeding in having mealtime pressure and feeling like we've got to do something because that's what we've always done in the home, or we don't use spices and herbs because that's not part of our flavor profiles usually, or we only use certain types of spices and herbs. I want us to challenge that today a little bit and try to break away from the pain of eating in creating mealtime experiences or opportunities that are more palatable. They don't have to be amazing. They don't have to go back to baseline, but they can still be more enjoyable than what they are today if you're struggling. If you haven't seen this, this is the new American plate. This is what the American Institute of Cancer Research recommends. This is what I alluded to earlier. 2/3 or more plant foods, 1/3 or less animal protein. You might be asking, am I supposed to be vegetarian? The answer is no. But I'd encourage you to think about what's called a plant-forward diet, where a lot of the foods we're consuming are whole foods, plant-based, meaning fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, legumes, etc. So there's still ways to get in a lot of these really key nutrients that support cells and support your metabolism and your health and well-being, including spices and herbs in that category too. So I just tossed a couple different ideas of recipes together. I didn't put portion sizes and things because that's usually not how I roll at my household. I like to just dump things in a pot, start flavoring, and see what we got. And so I encourage you to think about that sometimes, of not like sticking to a recipe, because that can actually be a disservice for you because it doesn't taste good to you. So literally, you can cook to taste sometimes, right? So golden turmeric lentil soup sounds kind of yummy. We're thinking about red lentils, low sodium veggie broth, carrots, sweet potato, turmeric, ginger, olive oil. Cooking that up to taste of what the flavors. We might add a little black pepper in there, white pepper. See how it goes. Taste it as you go. See what you like. I put little tips at the bottom because, as a reminder, small frequent meals tend to work better than 3 big portion meals. So if you're struggling with just getting in enough, don't get locked into breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can do mini meals. You don't need to eat breakfast. You can do like a mini-ish wake-up call food or drink. Doesn't have to be like a legit breakfast, and that's fine. Recipe number 2. Keep it simple. Build your own grain bowl. We're thinking about taste changes, variety, and this new American plate concept. You've got a base, whether that be some quinoa, rice, brown rice, red rice. If you like white rice and that's all you want to do, that's fine. We've got our base. We've got our veggies. If we want something that's more digestive friendly, we're thinking of string beans, green beans, carrots, mushrooms, peppers without skin. If we want something that's more gut health, if you will, that's going to be usually less digestive friendly. We're thinking about broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, things that are more cruciferous, more fibrous. We're thinking about protein, salmon, chickpeas. There's different ways that we can bring in some nice proteins here. Our dressing. We can do something as simple as olive oil, lemon, and spices. Make your own. Literally, as simple as olive oil, lemon juice, and spices. Can be super flavorful. A little vinegar in there. If food tastes metallic, please stop using metal silverware and metal cups. We forget about that sometimes. When you use a metal fork or spoon in your bowl and it's hot, your metallic taste will get worse. So switching over to bamboo utensils, plastic utensils if we need to. I recommend trying to use bamboo, which you can reuse those. And then we're also adding a lot of citrus and herbs that help brighten those flavors up if we're tasting metal. Okay. Metallic silverware, metallic drinkware, hydro flasks, cups. Unfortunately, this will worsen the water tasting like metal, which a lot of people say water tastes like metal. I don't want to hydrate because it tastes like metal. Don't drink from metal cupware. Recipe 3, banana oat energy bites. We're thinking about in-between meal snacking. Who's ever been told, try to have a snack? You're like, ugh, I don't want to do that. Keep it really simple. We can make muffins, we can make oat bites, we can make little bars at home, we can buy these convenience if we want. We want these calorie-dense options, especially for those who are struggling to maintain their weight or muscle. This is a really simple way to do it. You can make these in bars or balls or whatever shape you like. Some oats, some banana, some almond butter. You might have a drizzle of pasteurized honey, some ground flaxseed for some fiber. You like something like dark chocolate chips. You might change the almond butter to peanut butter or walnut butter. Lots of ways to do it. So there's different types of nuts coming in. And then you roll that up. And then you've got that ready to go. Some people will refrigerate them, make it into a little pack they can go. Other people freeze it. They make it as like a frozen, almost like a Greek yogurt dish they'll add into here and make it like a creamy dish. Lots of ways you can do this as in between for snacking. When you're adding calories to things, if you don't have any restrictions against these foods, because everyone's different and I don't know where you're at. In general, things like avocados, olive oils, nuts, nut butters, those are all really simple ways to add to your meals to just boost your calories if you need extra. Food safety. Wash your hands. Make sure that we're cooking our proteins appropriately. We're washing our fruits and veggies before eating. The guidelines no longer recommend usually neutropenic diets. We've really gone away from that. We've gone forward with making sure if we practice good food safety, that generally will be protective. But that means we have to do the things. Here's just a little snippet. That's where that unpasteurized honey comes from. Same thing with unpasteurized dairy products or unpasteurized juices. So just be really mindful as we're doing our selection of foods that we're keeping food safety in mind along the way. Myth versus fact. Couple things I thought might be fun just to kind of strike your fancy. With a couple of questions here that I commonly hear in practice. Should I go on a special diet like keto or juice cleanses during cancer treatments? And I want to preface that by saying there's no single diet that has been proven to treat or cure or really, prevent cancer even. We know there's diet patterns that are more supportive as a whole, but don't lock yourself into a particular diet by definition, because generally we don't need that. So if everyone says eat a Mediterranean diet, that's usually not realistic for people. It's the pattern itself. And then we weave in our own preferences, flavors, culture into it, so it makes sense for us, so it's enjoyable. Should I take a lot of supplements? This one's my favorite. Every day. What supplement should I take? Shelby, tell me what supplement I need to buy after I see you. Get that all the time. You know what I say? Go get some spices and herbs because, and hear me out on this, they're the most potent things to change your gut health that we see in literature. When we do studies and we look at people who start using a tablespoon of this, a tablespoon of this, we see over time their gut actually at the kind of cellular level and at the tissue level starts changing what their microbiome is favorably. Another reason to use spices and herbs because we know it favorably changes and modifies your gut at those really intricate levels for gut health and immune health. So no, you don't need supplements unless you have a deficiency that needs treated. That's the caveat. Is sugar feeding my cancer? People ask this all the time. If I eat sugar, does it feed my cancer? How I like to describe it, which I think keeps it simple, sugar is a carbohydrate. Goes into glucose is what it's called. Glucose is the energy source for all cells. Sugar, in theory, feeds every cell, cancer or not. If you stop eating sugar, and I'll talk about what sugar is in a second. If you stop eating sugar, your body's really good at converting other things for energy. Those cells are not going to die quicker. So the cancer cells do not die faster if you stop eating quote unquote sugar. What sugar does do, if we have a lot of added sugar in one time, it spikes our blood sugars, which makes us release insulin to bring it down and creates what's called this anabolic effect in the body. That's more pro-inflammatory. Cancer cells like inflammation. That is an indirect relationship. So it's not as simple as if I stop eating added sugar, does my cancer die? Does my tumor go away? The answer is no. But if we reduce how much added sugar we tend to have less inflammation in the body over time, which is more favorable for your body in general, for health and longevity and cell health. So what I like to think about is being intentional. If we're having added sugars, we do it in small amounts and not that often. So that's like a really kind of basic way to think about this. Don't beat yourself up if you had a half a donut at a birthday party. Please don't. If you ate a whole 12 dozen, it's a lot. So it's like also being reasonable with what we're doing and what our intention is. Do I need to avoid all raw foods? You told me to eat fruits and veggies and flavor them, enhance them today. We want to make sure that they are washed. You do not need to necessarily usually avoid raw produce, which can be really eye-opening for a lot of people and enhance the foods that they're enjoying. There's some really great helpful resources. If you have not looked at these before, I selected these out as I think they are most like patient-friendly and user-friendly. There's the American Institute for Cancer Research. There's a whole recipe database too that you can use. There's At the Table from MD Anderson, and the American Cancer Society has a nice like recipe kind of database as well. So if you're like, I don't know what to cook for dinner, you got a couple of options here where you can just poke around. And please remember that when you're looking at recipes, how it's flavored may not make sense for you. So use your knowledge and your skills that we talked about today and that you're going to learn and take home with you to figure out the flavor enhancements that work best for you. So with the last 5 minutes before we do the activity to wrap things out, I would love to popcorn around for a couple of minutes on anyone who would like to share their experience with cooking and nutrition related to what we talked about today. Any aha moments? You're like, oh, I've done this and it was really helpful. Or you're like, I'm struggling and I want to ask you something. Black garlic in what way? Yeah, so black garlic, by definition, is going to have a different flavor as kind of, and I'd love to hear your description of how you feel it's flavored differently as well from regular garlic. Garlic, onion, some of these different spices and herbs at a baseline, they're actually an antioxidant. And some are going to provide things like phytonutrients that are going to, big fancy compound plant terms that actually really help support the gut health, which is why you probably see things online that say black garlic and different forms of onion can be really impactful for gut health. What would you say from your experience with using black garlic is most flavorful for you? Or how do you like to use it? You like regular garlic better or black garlic better? Yeah. How different it is. Yeah. And that goes back to flavor preference. So let's say you're like, I don't really like garlic. Try different forms. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Uh-huh.
For soup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or any kind of food that you like to do.
Mhm.
The flavor is right there with me.
So we talked about garlic, ginger, and turmeric being a really nice blend in olive oil that we can then add to our dishes and has a really nice flavor enhancement. I love it. Thank you for sharing. Good. Amazing. Talk about fiber and gut health there. So we talked about a porridge using hemp seed, flax seed, and chia seed. And then we talked about enhancing that with garlic clove, ginger root, cinnamon clove, and nutmeg. Talk about some gut health. Wow. Wow, it's incredible. So again, these things can be leveraged at home to support your gut health and to support your flavors. Go ahead. Okay, thank you.
Notice with my culture has a lot of hard spices like chilies.
Yep.
And prior to cancer, I could handle ginger, cinnamon, and a lot of the chilies. During my journey, I've become so sensitive stomach wise that I even sometimes just smelling
Sure.
gives me heartburn. So I'm kind of wanting to step into a different category of spices that are still flavorful,
Yeah.
but without the challenge of so irritating the stomach. One of my favorite things used to be teas, and I used to love getting a ginger root to just kind of a couple little slices with some honey, and that would be so comforting. Now,
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
It's so scary, the feeling of the pain.
So we're talking about how, for those online, that flavor, the different forms of flavor may change during our cancer journeys of what we can tolerate and what is reasonable for our bodies to digest. And that goes back to fluidity and adaptability and understanding that everyone's journey is going to have different time points of what's going to work for our body and respecting that. And that's also where the caregiver patient dyad can get really complicated. If we're used to cooking these meals, we're used to using these ingredients, and now these don't feel good for somebody, that can feel like confusing, frustrating, misunderstandings can happen. So I think the awareness, first off, of what you tolerate well is important, because if you don't know, it's hard to know what's going on. So just having awareness of what spices and herbs work for you, and then also identifying your thresholds. Is there a different form? We talked about that with garlic and onions that I can tolerate because I can't do what I used to do. Is there different blends that feel safer for my body right now or more tolerable? Is there different amounts? I used to use a tablespoon, but now I can only use a pinch. So these are things just to think about. When you go to a spice and herb aisle in the market, there's a ton. So just at baseline, go check your pantry and see what you even have. A lot of times we have like 20 spices and herbs, but we use the same one or two. Guilty, right? Yeah.
The cauliflower with steamed balls, and then you add these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, so using some really soft cooked, roasted, or boiled veggies and adding blends of spices and herbs to flavor them. So something like cauliflower, we cook that down. It's really soft. At that point, probably easier to digest for sure than raw. And then we add a nice spice blend to it to bring out the flavor of something that otherwise might be very plain. So we're moving forward. I'll see if there's any questions in the chat here.
Yes, we have one online. So one of our participants had their gallbladder surgically removed. Two questions. Truth or myth that the gallbladder is unnecessary? And then two is, what food or herbs help someone without a gallbladder?
That's great. So with the question about a gallbladder being necessary or not, just to, again, preface this, I'm not a physician or your surgeon, so I can't speak to the case of your gallbladder being removed. However, I can speak from a dietitian lens that the body is able to adapt, for the most part, of when that gallbladder is removed to still be able to digest fat to some degree. 30%, 30, of people will have fat tolerance issues after a gallbladder removal. We know that. There are strategies that you can work with a dietitian on if you've had your gallbladder removed and you're having long-term difficulties, because there are things that can pop up as side effects to gallbladder removal long-term with digesting fats. So hopefully that helped you out. Question number 2, foods or herbs that can help somebody without a gallbladder. There's not necessarily, I don't want you to think of a specific spice or herb that helps an organ, because that's not how it works. What works, though, is that when we have diversity with spices and herbs, that supports our gut health and our digestive tract over time. And also, spices and herbs tend to be used as a flavor enhancement, which is what we talked about, that can help improve your eating experience. Then, in turn, improves your nutrition status. Okay, great questions, of course. And then we will go ahead and move with the last 15 minutes to our activity, which is building your own herb and spice blend. For those of you online, you can also do this at home today. So you can go to your cabinet, pull out all of your spices and herbs, check the expiration dates for those who have not used this in a while, figure out what you want to use, and I encourage you to pick at least 2 or 3 that you want to dump into a little bowl and use at your next mealtime. You can go anywhere from using something that's more warm, like we've got here a nutmeg, cinnamon, pumpkin pie spice, something that has more warm flavors, to something that's going to be a little bit more savory. We've got things like our sage, our dried garlic, our oregano, our parsley. And then we've got some of these more potent flavors like our chili powders, and our, I think, paprika. So there's different options, and I want you to choose at least 2 or 3 that you can shake into your sandwich bag and take home, and then use with a mealtime coming up to try this out. So that's what's going to be our activity for now. Those of you online are welcome to do this at home, and just notice what you notice about this activity when you're eating and how it changes the eating experience from what you usually taste from a flavor perspective. All right.
Any, for those online, any kind of suggestions on what to do or not to do?
Yeah. So great question. So trying to figure out how to start with this. What I would recommend doing is figuring out what are flavors that you enjoy, first off. And if you want to be adventurous and you're like, I don't really know because I don't use spices and herbs, what I'd recommend doing is choosing if you want something that's more warm, which is going to be something on this right side, like the cinnamon, the nutmeg, some of these more brown types of spices. In the middle, I've categorized it as some of these that are going to be more kind of savory. Some are a little bit lighter, something like parsley, something like the onions, or the dried ginger, dried onion. We've got sage, so things that can really bring out some of those savory flavors. And then on the left-hand side, all the way down on the table, is going to be the things that are a little bit more spicy and potent, as we talked about, like the chili peppers and the chili powders. So what I recommend doing is figuring out there's like 3 buckets. You can mix and match. You could do where you've got this nice savory blend and you add a little spice or kick to it. You could just stay in this middle section here where you've got some more just savory flavors mixed together. Or you might want to do something that's nice and warm. Going back in the slides, let me see here. I can show you a couple ideas. I'll keep this last slide up so you have it for some of the pairings you can think about right here. So these are some pairings that you can consider if you don't know where to start using some of these ingredients that we've got up here. Otherwise, you can kind of come through, choose 2 or 3 or more if you like. If you want to be really adventurous, you could really put kind of everything in that middle category together in a little kick on the side. Okay. Or if you want to stay kind of neutral and keep something warm, you've got these 3 over here that are more of your warm spices. So what we'll have everyone do is each row will come up. You'll get your sandwich bag or your cup, depending on how you'd like to do it.
Really quickly before we do the in-person urban spice sampling, and thank you, Shelby, for just a really informative workshop. So much great information that was shared. I just want to do a last call on questions for those online before we close out to do the in-person. You can put them into the chat, or you can put them into the chat or unmute yourself, indicating you have a question. Yes, go ahead.
Do you have an opinion on fresh versus dry?
Spices?
Spices?
They taste very different. So dried usually is going to, at least for me, usually be a little bit more like potent versus like the freshness. Fresh is usually a little bit lighter. And then if you cook it, it's going to taste different too versus like basil, right? That's kind of fresh that you don't cook down versus basil that you chop up and cook. So anytime you add heat to something, it changes the flavor too in the experience.
I've never used white pepper.
Yeah, it's tasty.
What's the,
I should have brought it.
I mean, I'm used to the black peppers, like
Mhm.
I know the kick of that.
Yeah.
What's the comparison or?
They taste different. It's hard for me to say like a comparison from a flavor standpoint. I think it's softer. Yeah, I would say it's softer than a black pepper. They do taste different. Like it's a different flavor that you're gonna have. Yeah, you can put anything on eggs, honestly. You put literally anything up here. Maybe not the pumpkin pie, but you could put any of these things on eggs up here, 100%. Except for maybe the pumpkin pie.
Not as far as.
Yeah, a little bit lighter.
If you are preparing something using these spices so we can save the flavor.
I love it. So they're asking about doing a follow-up class to do some meal tasting techniques. So that was one of the things that I encourage you at home to do with the rice, the mashed potato, or the cracker. And you can do home experiments with this. I wish I could have done that today, but we just don't have the bandwidth or time for that.
So it's about that honey.
Yeah.
What's the reason for not being able to have
Honey.
natural honey or whatever?
Because it's unpasteurized. So it's considered a high risk for having bacteria or what's called botulism. So unpasteurized dairy products, unpasteurized honey, unpasteurized juices are not recommended during active periods of cancer treatments.
Nuka.
Depends on if it's pasteurized or unpasteurized. It's usually unpasteurized. You would have to look and it will literally say on it, unless you get it, if you get it fresh at a stand or something, it's unpasteurized. So just be mindful of that those are unpasteurized products.
So it should say pasteurized.
Yes, if it's going through some sort of company that's going through the grocery market. But if you're buying it at a market, like a local food market or food stand, they're not going to have a label. So you can ask them, has this been pasteurized? They should know. Unless they pasteurize it using high heat treatment, it's unpasteurized. Yep, great question.
You mentioned a lot of acting. How do they compare to cilantro?
Cilantro is just a different flavor than parsley. I was talking about parsley because I brought it today. Cilantro is incredible. Some people think cilantro tastes soapy. So if you're one of those that has, a particular gene that notices soapiness with cilantro, it's probably not going to be in your cabinet, and that's fine. And again, cilantro can be fresh or dried. So like going back, you don't have to have dried spices. You can have fresh and it's incredible. So there's lots of different ways that you can start incorporating these things. Great question.
All right, thank you again so much, Shelby, for your time and expertise.